Beyond.
Beyond is the name of the show. We are on episode 542. My name is Max Scoville, and I'm joined today by Alana Pierce.
Hi.
Zach Ryan.
Hello.
And Cassidy Moser.
Howdy.
Thank you guys for coming in and joining me, hanging out, talking about games.
I just
You
want
got
to
a new shirt?
I did get a new shirt. This is the first time I've ever worn this shirt in one of these videos.
I like it.
Or
I
ever.
like IGN is such a close knit group that's an easily identifiable thing.
You're
It's
actually
like,
the second person
where
to
it's like,
recognize that this is a new shirt.
hey, you got some new clothing. Nice work.
Yeah, that's sick. And this is a PlayStation podcast, so let's get into the games. We got a bunch of stuff to talk about today. Jurassic World Evolution looks like a fun Jurassic Park game. Remedy Entertainment is teasing what they're doing at E3. But first and foremost, we got a big, huge bunch of stuff coming out of Red Dead Redemption 2. That was that like an IGN exclusive thing?
Yes, that's true.
What do you guys think of this? What's your take on Red Dead 2?
So at the risk of sounding unpopular, I wasn't a huge fan of Red Dead Redemption, the first one. I thought it was fine. I really liked all the stuff that people mostly hated. Like my favorite part of the game is Mexico, and everybody's like kind of famously is like, oh, that's the worst part of the game. But I don't know, like just watching, I think especially because they started this whole marketing cycle with a tone piece that was very reminiscent of like some of the westerns that I grew up on, and like obviously clearly inspired by that stuff. I'm super into this game.
So what was it about the game that you didn't like? Because you like westerns. And
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was just sort of open world fatigue at that point. But I remember it just felt like it took me forever to get through it, even though I mostly mainlined the story. It just felt like I played it for months. Like,
Yeah, I think I'm kind of with you on that. I didn't love Red Dead Redemption.
yeah, and I didn't.
And it wasn't like it was bad. It was more just nothing about it hooked me.
People are so angry at us right now.
Yeah,
They really are. I really liked it.
Yeah,
I
know it's one of those games that people are like, this is my favorite game of all time, and they show people that aren't into video games like, here's a game that is so incredible, like just such a genre defining kind of thing. And to me, it was like, this is good, but I preferred GTA 4 and 5 over Red Dead.
I think it's fascinating. I think it's like a beautiful game. I think it's a technical marvel. They make phenomenal stuff, but at the same time, I've never been like a really easy sell on Western stuff. And it's not that I dislike
That's weird because
Western.
you love horses so much.
I do enjoy horses. I think they're cool, but they're not as cool as awesome Lamborghini cars, which there are none of in the Red Dead.
Yeah.
I think it's cool to kind of look at Red Dead Redemption and then kind of you can see so much of the framework of GTA 5 in there too.
Of course.
Like with the sort of the way the mission structures and sort of just I guess some of the mechanics too. Like and it feels like in that sense really one of the more modern Rockstar games. And then, I mean, they're always kind of iterating and kind of shifting stuff around. But Red Dead 2, on the other hand, I'm like really, I don't want to say I'm like really excited. I'm feeling very confident it's going to be stunning and incredible.
Right.
I'm very curious about it. Like the first Red Dead, it never really hooked me in any particular way. Like, and I really like westerns. I grew up on westerns, but I don't know if it was, like you said, Zach, like just open world fatigue, and like we've seen this so many times at this point that nothing is different enough. And also, I think the pacing of it was kind of weird too. So I'm kind of hoping that they jump right into action with it this time.
Well, they did the thing with the first Red Dead where it's very much like you got to go through all these hoops to get the feel of the game, and they make you do X, Y, and Z. And I feel like with GTA 5, they sort of moved away from that by having you split between three characters, and like you'd be like, oh, maybe this thing doesn't seem fun right now. Well, here, jump over here and do something different. And at the same time, they also didn't restrict you to any areas. Like they just turned you loose, and you could go nuts with that. And what's interesting about, I mean, with the Wild West, obviously it's much less densely populated than GTA,
City.
modern day anything, and that's tricky with an open world game because you run into that like emptiness, and obviously
I think you look at games like Horizon, like that game does a pretty good job with worlds that are still populated by things, but not necessarily people.
Sure,
We did see some of that in the trailer as well. I think I have an echo on my mic.
Yeah, you're coming into the studio.
Yeah. So we did see.
Barrett, fix the microphone, damn it. We're talking about the cowboy game.
Still talking. Nope. Yeah.
Good?
Okay, we good.
Okay.
So we did see some of that in the trailer. We saw different kinds of animals in there as well. And there was one city that looked pretty densely populated, which was actually my favorite shot from what we saw last week, is just opening on this city that has all these different colors and it looks like it's really busy. And I think that Rockstar are very, very good at basically making NPCs feel like they're real. Like the characters in the world around you, they'll react to rain and they'll actually like respond to the things that happen around them, even if it's goofy. So it does look like it should be populated. I still really wanted to see gameplay, which we didn't really see any of. I want to know what the UI looks like. I want to know how I'm going to be controlling these characters. But I think the feature that John Ryan wrote about it, or the preview, actually did dive into some of that. So totally read it. He didn't get to play it. It was hands off, so he was watching someone else play it. Does mean the game was in action, was actually in engine, but we didn't get to capture that footage either.
Yeah,
so.
I love that Rockstar does. They kind of tease you, and at the same time, they were also very tight-lipped on any details about the mechanics of the game. Like basically, reading that preview, if it wasn't a Rockstar game, I feel like it would seem like a bunch of like fluff and crap. Like it's very much about the sort of the details and the atmosphere. And if these guys didn't have 20 years of legacy at this point, I would be like sort of like, okay, so what? Big deal. What
You're
are
like,
what are you
everyone
doing?
says that.
Why can't you show gameplay? But in this case, I'm like, no, this actually sounds like they're doing something kind of incredible.
Yeah.
I feel like they're really doubling down on kind of finding the margins between sort of the big things that you notice in games and really focusing on like the details. I think specifically the fact that it is sort of this, the Wild West could be this empty world. It could be this big, empty, sort of desolate, wasteland. And they're finding, it sounds like they're really populating it with life without, forcing it. Like in the case of Horizon, obviously there's a lot of wildlife running around, a lot of weird, clock radio dinosaurs jumping around, that would ruin the illusion of Red Dead, which is going for obviously something much more grounded and realistic. But it talked about like trying to really, and again, this is sort of like nebulous Rockstar kind of like artsy fartsy talk, but about how they don't want to have like clear cut side missions and main quests.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly how structured that's going to be, but from the sound of it, they want you to they kind of just want to turn you loose and have you find the story yourself.
Right.
Which is like really, really exciting if they actually deliver what I think they're delivering.
I mean, I think ultimately the thrust of the Old West and like the draw of it as a setting is the fact that it is kind of this idealized, like, we don't know what's out there. Like, it was one of the most recent settlings that we've done in history, right? So I think as long as they can kind of play into that idea of the West as a character, it could be really cool. But how do you do that? It's tricky.
So I talked to John Ryan about this a bunch, and it was weird because it felt like he was sort of almost like this. Did I dream this? Did I imagine this? And they weren't giving him a lot of like hard information, but he was telling me there's a part where kind of after most of the demo, they're sort of they've done the whole bank heist and all this sort of the big like exciting like sizzle not steak moments where it's the explosions and the bank vaults and all that. And then he's just kind of riding, they're just having the guy just ride the horse down the road, and there was a guy coming the other direction. And as you pass him, you have the option to talk to him.
Right.
And it's almost like he compared it to sort of Fallout 4's dialogue choices, where it's not so much like here are your specific dialogue options, here are sort of general attitudes towards how you'd react, and you can be antagonistic, you can be openly threatening, or you can be friendly. And theoretically, if you're friendly, you kind of turn your horse around, you start riding alongside this guy, and he just starts talking to you. And John Ryan was like, I don't know where this ends. Does this guy, if you follow this guy home, will he introduce you to his wife? Will you suddenly unlock a whole bunch of like activities you can go do?
Extra quests. Yeah,
I love that. I love that in games where you can't see the bottom, like where you don't know, where they specifically don't show you everything on purpose. Like they let you find it.
Wolfenstein last year had a lot of this kind of stuff where there'd be dialogue between characters that played out after cinematics that you were forced to watch. Like they would continue in a way that like you could walk away from it and miss like entire character moments. And like some of that stuff, I found myself just like setting the controller down and watching these two characters interact with each other until they, until that scene was done. It was like a really interesting way to tell more of a story. Like you get one specific story, but if you take the time to just sit and watch these characters interact, like you'll learn so much more about, each character's dynamic and stuff.
I always feel so torn on how whether or not I like that, because I did like that where it's like you sit and Grace Walker's going to sit and give this whole thing and you learn so much about her. And on the one hand, I think it's cool that is there because it does lend some life to it. But on the other, if you are a player that doesn't want to sit there and wait for that, because the idea of a game is you don't sit, that's a movie.
Sure.
Like then you miss out on that. So I don't know where that balance is, but it is a really cool idea, and it's a really cool way to kind of give a little bit more life to that.
Yeah, it seems like a lot of games right now are trying to figure out how to make stories less linear. and that's a really difficult thing to do in a game, especially when
it's hard to tell a
set pieces are scripted.
cohesive story in a non-linear fashion.
But Ken Levine gave this talk at GDC that was basically, I think it might have been a couple of years ago now, about the idea of a video game being a series of Lego pieces that you would like take a chunk of something and you would stack it on the Lego, and every player can in theory end up getting the same pieces but in different orders, and they still build up to the same Lego set, but like the idea of like, okay, we can time the different story beats completely differently, and it seems like everyone is like trying to figure out how to do that right now. Like that's the next challenge that I think we have, is how to change storytelling without losing like major dramatic set piece moments, and it seems like Rockstar's trying to do the same thing in theory, and I think that's really exciting.
I mean, there obviously still are going to be big kind of cutscenes and things that are very clearly sort of scripted in a conventional sense, and there is the overarching, like, there is the story. But I think how it sort of unfurls is going to be different in Red Dead than we're used to, and I like that they have faith that people will find what they put out there.
Totally.
And from the sound of it, like the idea that they're sort of every NPC in this game, every like random person on the street could have a story attached to them, and that they will sort of react to you depending on how you're behaving in the game. But in this case, as opposed to there being, I don't know, one NPC has like their dot on the map is like blue because they're a quest giving NPC. It sounds like Rockstar's trying to kind of pull that back. And again, we didn't get strict details on the mechanics and how this stuff actually kind of like plays out. But that's really interesting to me. It also it plays in very well to like how they haven't shown us gameplay. They'll drop a bunch of screenshots and they'll have like, here, somebody wrote up a bunch of words about gameplay they saw in action. They understand that, I think less is more when it comes to like kind of exposing people to your game. And the more you withhold, the more people actually want what's there.
Yeah, but there is such thing as not enough.
That's true. That's true. But I mean, they did put out a bunch of stuff. I think in the case of like of the way they tell a story in like an open world game, having a linear story in place, it doesn't really make sense, to be like, oh, you've got to follow this exact path, when it's like, but there's a whole world out here. Why did you build the whole world if I'm going to be sort of punished?
Sure.
So in this case, with Wolfenstein, it's especially interesting because that is so much more of a linear game. But with something like Red Dead, building an entire world and like filling it with life, and then having the life be the sort of story itself is.
Well, that's where I go back to. Sorry, Zach. Sit down. No, that's kind of where I go back to, like, the world as a character is usually a vital part of open world games and the success of them. So depending on how they handle that, like, that could be a really cool way to just have a general story that everybody shares, but everybody kind of pilots it differently.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that one thing that has changed a lot since the last Red Dead game is like the importance of emergent storytelling, where a lot of that stuff happened in the last generation, but it's become so much more prevalent in newer games, especially like newer open world games. And the guys that went with John Ryan, our IGN UK team, they talked about their visit to Rockstar on the IGN UK podcast last week, and they were talking about how like there's so much in the minutia of this game, and that the way your horse will kind of stumble down a hill and the rocks will follow behind him, or the fact that like if you go out, like the game is built around like a central camp hub, like you keep returning to the same camp with the same characters. And if you go out and do side quests for like weeks of in-game time, when you come back, your team, like your camp is like, where the hell have you been? Like, we've been waiting for you and you've been gone for, like weeks at a time. Like, that kind of stuff is way more interesting to me. Like, I know that Rockstar will deliver like a really good story, but I think all that stuff around it is what's got me.
It's almost guaranteed that they'll have an interesting story. So tell me the rest of it. Like John Ryan was telling me, you can do dressage, like on a horse. You could do like fancy little trot. Crap, just for no reason, just if you want to.
Really?
I'm like, all right, cool.
Horse dancing in the game?
Yeah, do horse dancing.
All right.
I know.
It's too bad John Ryan passed away and couldn't be on the show this week.
Yeah.
But do you guys think we'll see it at E3?
If Rockstar does another partnership with Sony like they did for GTA 5,
I think they are partnered with Sony for this.
I think it might be on like a first-party stage, maybe. But
that's what I'm thinking.
Rockstar doesn't like the craziest thing about Rockstar to me has always been like they don't need E3. They don't need traditional media. Like they're such a huge household name that they don't need that. They don't need to rely on that sort of marketing because it's like, hey, here's another game from us, and it's just going to sell a hajillion copies.
The highest selling entertainment product of all time is this.
That's nuts. Great. I mean, I have like so much faith in what they do, and occasionally they sort of have like missteps here and there, or they try something and it doesn't quite click. But I like that they're always sort of pushing things in new directions as opposed to just giving people what they think they want. Like there's a certain like, I think with good art, it's not made being like, what do people want out there? It's more like, what do we want to put out there? And in this case, it's like, this I feel like it's hard to talk about this game because it is so much of the 8 years it's been in development has been on stuff like minutia, like rocks tumbling down a hillside or horse dancing.
Well, Rockstar are also known for doing a ton of like field research. They'll go take 30,000 photos of one location to make sure they can recreate it correctly.
They actually went back in time.
Yeah,
to research this game.
Built a
This is a very expensive game.
Yeah.
They had to give the whole art team cholera. It was really not a good time. No, but I'm like I almost don't want to know more at this point. I kind of just want to jump in there and but I'm like,
I would like to see some of the actual mechanical gameplay changes that they've made too. But
I know we got to move, but there's one thing that I did want to talk about. So we kind of caught some heat last week because we did a dissection of the trailer that dropped, and John Ryan specifically. May he rest in peace. He
don't even joke.
He outlined the fact that like there is actually a lot of gameplay in that trailer. It's just that the HUD is off, right? Like we're seeing gameplay, but it looks like cinematics because they've turned off the HUD, they've turned off the interactivity stuff, like especially the stuff like the boxing. You know, like there's things that are in there that like there's shots where it's like clearly behind that character's back in a third person angle. So like it's there,
but
it's just
shot
not readily
in a
apparent.
theatrical way.
Well, like, I guess the thing is that I mean, they probably have that theatrical camera built
of course,
as they do in GTA 5.
Which
but it's
makes
like,
sense.
Well, I want to see the HUD then. Like, I want to know what that looks like.
That is always the most important thing to me when I see a game is like, what does the HUD look like?
I would love it if like they show us
you can
the
turn it
HUD
up.
and it's just the most egregious, like overly stylized, just distraction.
I hope it's like Ocarina of Time on the 64.
Yeah.
Just takes up like a fourth of the screen.
It's all like primary colors and all the fonts are dying cowboys. You're like, why would you do this? It's just like gritty cursive.
Your health bar is like a bunch of stagecoaches.
Yeah.
I want all the fonts.
You're almost out of horses.
Making Comic Sans.
Yeah. I think the big conversation too is will this come to PC, do you think? I mean, this is a PlayStation show.
I don't think it will initially, but yeah.
No, I mean Rockstar has a history of publishing these games to console first and then, you know, a year down the road.
Well,
yeah.
Red Dead?
No,
not Red Dead.
PC.
Red Dead never made it to PC. So I guess
People are still mad about it.
They're so mad about it.
I guess I should amend that. Like they don't have a history of doing it, but that's what they did for GTA 5 and it's tremendously successful. So
especially with the modding community, I feel like it's like a big part of what
Hey, they'll mod that Ferrari into Red Dead.
Yeah,
best of both
and
worlds.
the crappy fonts. It'll be good.
I just want to do dressage as like SpongeBob.
That'd be great.
That sounds dope. Yeah.
I'm really excited about this
horse
game.
dance.
Horse dance.
So speaking of worlds being the character, we got to look at Jurassic World Evolution, which was a game that I was really not interested in when it was first announced. I was like, okay, this sounds fine. And we have the first 20 minutes up on IGN, and it looks really, really cool.
I think it sounds incredible.
Is this the Planet Coaster?
This is the Zoo Tycoon people.
Zoo, okay, gotcha.
So now you can make something that's sort of like a zoo if everything were to go horribly awry and the dinosaurs were to go loose. Jeff Goldblum narrates this.
Yeah, I was talking to Ryan McCaffrey about this morning. Like, I think that getting Goldblum to narrate this game is such a smart call on these guys' parts because he's such a part of the zeitgeist right now. Like, he's like this sort of borderline meme where anything you put him in, people are like, "Oh, it's Goldblum!" Yeah. And so, like, to have him narrate this game puts it on so many more people's radar just because of who he is.
Oh, he's 20%
to this franchise, exactly. Like to this franchise, and then also like just to our age group. I feel like so. Yeah.
Yes, but imagine if they had gotten the DNA strand from Jurassic Park 1.
Hello, John.
You never know. It might pop up. That seems like the kind of
I hope he's like
fan
Clippy.
service that's in there.
So it
Dino DNA.
It seems like a regular park building tycoon game, but unlike Zoo Tycoon, which is like aimed more, or the most recent one aimed more towards children, had this like very annoying park cap where you basically you'd hit a certain point that wasn't even that long. You play for a couple of hours and then you couldn't build on your park. This is more about like creating one large park and it throwing disasters at you all the time. I love these kinds of games. I hope there's breeding stuff because I get real involved in breeding those animals. I'm a big fan of that.
All right.
It's good fun. But the disasters are what make me excited.
I hope that the dinosaur game is real horny.
It's a lot of fun. You breed an animal.
This is a Jurassic World game, not a Westworld game. Okay.
I just want to be able to make weird breeds. It's a fun thing to do in a video game.
Make this weird
Were
bird
you a
dinosaur
big
do sex on a
Were you a big
Triceratops.
Spore fan?
I did like Spore, but
Okay.
not a huge Spore fan. But I do like Zoo Tycoon like quite a
I
bit.
think you might have been the only Spore fan.
I liked Spore.
Me, us,
That's all right.
the fan club.
Yeah.
2 Spore fans on
No,
one
but
show.
I think this is supposed to be a little more mature and aged more towards challenge than Zoo Tycoon was.
I'm really excited about this just because this style of game, I feel like it was everywhere in the 90s.
Yeah.
Around the time Jurassic Park was a thing, like SimCity 2000 was a thing, and that was like everywhere, and it was always like they'd be on school library computers because they were like vaguely educational. And in this case, I'm like, what if Sim Park went out of control and all the animals were trying to kill people?
Well, that's what I'm most excited about. 'Cause like SimCity 2000, my favorite thing to do when I was a kid was like build this city and then all of a sudden just decimate it.
Right. Exactly.
Like,
yeah. That's everybody.
So like if that's doable here too. Like,
that was a game where you also had to like look at budgets, and you're like, I don't want that. I just want aliens to blow up my town and destroy my biodomes. And in this case, it's like, I don't know. Also being able to like zoom in on the dinosaurs. Like I haven't played one of these games in, I don't know, ages, so to play something that's like, modern graphical fidelity, and then I can, like kind of also.
So in Zoo Tycoon, you could actually jump into a third person mode where you would have an avatar and you could run around the park. I don't know if they're going to do that, but if they do, I think that's really cool.
Really neat.
Somebody was saying something about it. There's like if the dinosaurs escape, there's like a tranquilizer gun mode where you have to shoot them or something.
Okay.
I don't know about that.
That sounds great.
So yeah, I'm like really excited. I'm more excited about this game than I am for Jurassic World Fallen Kingdom.
This is honestly like a really, really awesome way to do a video game adaptation too. Like a lot of time licensed games get a bad rap, and rightly so, because most of the time they're garbage. But like this seems like a really cool way to take that fiction and build on it in a way that's not beholden to the other movies and isn't beholden to fan expectations beyond just what it is. So
really all you need is the park, and then the dinosaurs ruin it, and then you're kind of like halfway there.
Great.
They also announced that Bryce Dallas Howard and BD Wong are going to be doing voices in that. So
Can I just say, I like that on our show notes you have Bryce Dallas Howard and then in all caps with an exclamation mark, BD Wong!
yeah, I'm going to be honest. I don't give a crap that Bryce Dallas Howard is in that, but BD Wong
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
from Law and Order, I'm on board. I love him.
But do you remember when she ran in heels for feminism?
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. That was a good. I don't.
It's a standout moment.
Not great. Life finds a way.
I have no idea
Clever
who that
girl.
is.
It's Ron Howard's daughter. Anyway, moving on.
Thanks for that.
Remedy Entertainment, the folks behind Alan Wake and Quantum Break and things that rhyme with
Max
that.
Payne.
Max Payne.
Max
Death Rake.
the Max Payne trilogy.
Okay, not all their games rhyme. But they announced they have a new game at E3 they're going to be showing off, and the code name is P7.
Persona 7.
Damn it.
It's short for Project
Never
7.
saw it coming.
It is apparently going to be releasing in 2019, and it is on schedule. And best of all, it's going to be coming to PS4 in addition to Xbox One and PC. So
Yeah, so I was talking to Alana about this before the show started. I was under the assumption that Remedy had sort of converted to full-time Xbox development, like they were like sort of a second party to Xbox, to Microsoft.
Yeah, I thought they were like acquired.
It's project to project.
Yeah, so that's interesting to me. Like that's really cool that they can show up and make a PlayStation game now.
Yeah.
I mean,
Because I didn't get to play Quantum Break. I know it wasn't like crazy well received, but I'm not an Xbox boy, so I never played it. So, but I am interested in their work. I really love
They
Alan
do
Wake.
very different things with that games, and we don't know anything about what this game is. There's been a couple of job listings that can kind of give you an idea of the narrative focus, but none of that's really surprising or indicative of what the game will be. So I just want to see it.
I'm more curious to see what they're going to do. Is there going to be another medium that they tie into this, like they did with Quantum Break? Is there
Probably not. Didn't work very well for them.
You know, there was a handful of games for a while that did that. Like Defiance did that with the sci-fi show.
yeah.
I mean, Far
That was even
Far Cry
God.
5 just did that. Like Far Cry 5 has that weird prequel
Yeah,
film
but
on
I don't.
Amazon.
Yeah.
Fantasy.
These were different because they were slightly more integrated.
Yeah.
Than that was. But yeah, like who knows? Alan Wake was a really cool game too. Like that did some kind of unique and creative things. in
Spooky,
terms of
very
the structure.
spooky.
So
what do you guys want to see with this? Like if it's a new thing, like
I like narrative driven games. I just want to see a cool story.
what kind of story though?
The one where the good guys win.
Oh, that sounds
controversial.
avant-garde. What a crazy idea.
There are so many narrative-driven games on PlayStation right now, so it's like that's a thing that like there's an abundance of. I would say I liked what they did with combat in both of these games. It's very different, and that's what I want to see. Is like if it's a third-person action game, I want to know what weird powers I might have. In Alan Wake, it was the idea of like pointing the torch and then throwing the thing, and like I like the way that they make combat feel very distinct from any other game out there. Sure, like the narrative has to be good, and I'm sure that they will deliver on that in a weird way. But I want to know what I'm going to be doing, and I want it to be weird.
I'm honestly more surprised that it's not an Xbox exclusive because Xbox needs.
It would just be that Microsoft didn't pursue it for whatever reason.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they probably also just want more people to play their games.
Sure.
I don't know.
You limit yourself when you're on one platform.
Yeah. No, it'll be exciting to see that. Now, on the subject of narrative-driven games, one of the PlayStation Plus games this month is Beyond Two Souls. I figure we could talk about it because it's free and it's fun to play it, and also there's a brand new David Cage game coming out at the end of this month.
Max asked me if I wanted to be on Beyond on Friday. He's like, "Do you want to be on Beyond on Monday?" And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "It's great. Beyond Two Souls is out on PlayStation Plus, so pick that up and play a little bit over the weekend." And I said, "I will not be doing that."
It's better. He walked up to me and was like, "Oh, that Ghost game is out." And I'm like, "What Ghost game?"
It's a ghost game. What do you want?
I think it's interesting that these two stories that we put these together because I've honestly always kind of thought of Remedy as a US version of Quantic. Like their games are similar but different in the way that they're like very narratively driven and mechanically like sort of sparse. Like I don't necessarily feel like Alan Wake was like mechanically super demanding.
Where's Remedy based?
Aren't they in like Denmark?
Yeah, I didn't think
Are
they
they
were in
really?
the US.
I thought they were US.
I don't.
No, I think
Never mind what
Let
I
me look
just
it up.
said.
I think they're in Europe
They're like
somewhere.
very Scandinavian.
me look it up.
See, I think David Cage is closer to Peter Molyneux than he is anybody else.
Oh, totally.
Yeah.
But no, playing Beyond, I never really. I think I screwed around with this. It's interesting because I previewed it a few times. I think I interviewed David Cage.
They finish.
No, they're from the
Yeah,
States.
they finish.
Okay, so Remedy is finished. So yes, keeping things on track as always. What the was I
You
saying?
were talking
I could have sworn they were an American developer. I
you're
feel
talking
really
about-
stupid.
We're talking about
That was
Beyond
my
Two
bad.
Souls.
Yeah,
Anyway,
you're
so
playing it over the
yeah, so
weekend.
Beyond Two Souls, which Zach played. Tell us about that, Zach.
Wow, Ellen Page, there she is. She's got the ghost friend.
Yeah,
the
Juno
ghost.
and her funky ghost
Is she
pal.
pregnant in
right.
this
He's
one?
turning loose.
Yeah, pregnant with a
Not
ghost.
pregnant.
Willem Dafoe, he's there.
Yeah. So what's weird about this is it's totally out of order. Like it completely jumps around in time frame and it's
There it is,
I think
jumping around.
Is a neat literally jumping around. I previewed this a couple times and I think it was like one part you're on a train, another part you're like a child, and they were like, don't worry, this doesn't spoil anything because you have no idea what's happening when you're playing the game normally. And it's it's completely non-linear, which I kind of dig. On the PS4 version, there's actually the option to play it. They call it remixed, but it's actually just chronological. And I'm kind of I don't really find myself compelled to do that because I think that kind of breaks it.
That's like when you remember all those rumors about the Memento DVD. Like there was like a code that you could put into the Memento DVD that would put that film in chronological order.
Why
I was
would
like,
you wanna do that?
That's missing the whole point.
Yeah.
Like
They just did that with season 4 of Arrested Development.
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, they just recut it.
Yeah.
So I actually, I don't hate Beyond Two Souls. I actually,
either.
I think that game has some.
Do you know that it's from
ideas.
a prominent American developer?
Oh, for
No,
God's
not
sake.
sure. No, definitely French.
And like we were kind of talking about story structure earlier, and Beyond kind of does this thing that The Last of Us did to a lesser degree, where it isn't just the same story for the whole duration of the game. It's kind of that story, but broken up into different pieces. And each piece has a specific purpose to the whole, which I think is a really cool and interesting way to attack narrative, especially from a pacing perspective. Because when a game's like 12 hours long, it's super hard to keep pacing.
Yeah, I think that's probably the worst thing David Cage has going for him is that his games are. It's not that they're too long, is that they're about the same length always, but they're always sort of fragmented. And I don't understand why he can't just sort of like, for instance, Detroit Become Human is broken up between 3 characters. Heavy Rain was between 4 characters?
Yeah, something like that.
And this one is jumping around throughout an entire like course of someone's life. So it's like, what if you just took those already sort of parceled off segments and compressed them so that there's a complete story that can be played in like 3 hours? Because I probably played, I don't know, 2 or 3 hours. But I didn't get a finished story. I got like a bunch of like snippets of stuff.
But I'm kind of okay with that so long as there's a thread that connects all of them so that they can be viewed from above, I guess, as like a whole.
And we were just talking about GTA 5 having that, right? So it's like, I think that there are ways that you can do it well. I felt Beyond Two Souls was disjointed in a way that I found off-putting, but I liked it in Heavy Rain a lot.
It was really disjointed. Like, I think that it did it to a fault, but like, this is why I say The Last of Us. Like, The Last of Us is broken up into chapters of seasons, and each season has like its own arc, and it has a whole arc as a whole. It's on its own.
I'm not saying there shouldn't be like a cohesive narrative, but I think that it really
It's a little too choppy for its
It is a
own good.
disservice to have something that leans so heavily on story, like specifically on story. Like David Cage, that's his thing. Is he wants to tell a compelling story. And I think if it were like a movie length experience that had as many branching tendrils as like Detroit looks like it's going to have, that would be really fascinating to have something that's like, this is a game that you can play in 2 hours. There are 80 possible permutations of those 2 hours. You know, like the fact that you could go completely every which way. That'd be really cool because then I don't know. I'm more likely to replay something that's 2 hours than something that's 12 hours.
So you're almost talking about something like the Stanley Parable, like the way that game's sort of set up.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, Detroit is designed to let you replay every scene from that scene,
which I think is very smart. I really do like that.
I mean, there's also I think you're also sort of describing something that's kind of old school, like Resident Evil 2, where you play essentially like a Rashomon story, right? Where it's happening from this at the same time, but just from different perspectives. So for Detroit, you could play one 3-hour playthrough just as Kara and not jump around to different characters, right? And then go back and play, I don't know, who's that, like a Douglas, whatever.
I could see it being a cool New Game Plus thing when you finish the game. For Detroit, I think because these 3 characters are showing 3 different sides to one story, I like it the way that it is like that. But I totally agree. It would be cool to have it just in segments after you would finish it.
Look at Telltale's games. Those are usually, about 3 hours for an episode. I would love it if David Cage adopted that. And it's crazy because playing Beyond, there's a whole sequence which I absolutely adored where you get invited to this horrible birthday party.
Oh, that part was sad.
There are these awful teens who are like, "Hey, Juno, you want to try a beer?" "Hey, I heard you got a ghost. You want to make out?" And it's just and it's so goofy. But I'm also like, this is the best idea for a video game: is you are an awkward kid at a party and you have a ghost. I want an entire game that's that. But obviously, if you're kind of trying to scope this AAA video game, you're trying to sell it, you got to have a sequence where you're, I don't know, blowing up police helicopters.
That was, I feel like one of the things that stuck out to me is the biggest issue with Beyond Two Souls is that it kind of, at a certain point, felt like it was making itself up as it went along. The points where she is trying to come to terms with having this entity attached to her are the most interesting to me. It's when she's in this weird special operations thing that is
also I'm homeless.
What?
They just throw a lot of stuff.
It's what is going on here? That's where it sort of feels and then this happens, and then this happens. It's okay, well.
Yeah, I mean, in that sense, I'm sort of curious to try to play it chronologically. I was playing co-op with my fiance, which was really fun because
she told me about it.
These games are. So last week I talked about how video games are in theory a waste of time. I mean more in that they're not real life. They are escapism. They are a waste of time in the same way that any form of art is a waste of time, in that it provides something that's not exactly literal sustenance.
Waste is a very charged word, but
I think it can be mentally productive.
Yes,
but I know what you're
jump
trying
down
to
my
say.
throat about semantics. Video games are also stupid in that they're beautiful, wonderful intersections of art and technology.
Sure.
They're pushing the envelope. I hate that I have to explain this. But at the same time, they're sort of if you it's especially noticeable in David Cage games. It all comes down to the fact that one person is controlling them. You can have all the polish in the world, and I was having this playing Beyond where they were all right, what's her name? Jolie or something?
That
whatever.
sounds right.
Yeah. Jody. They're like, all right, now come on, Jody. That's Willem Dafoe, and he goes, come on, Jody, we got to get you in the experimentation room. And then Jody's just awkwardly walking around in this hallway and standing in corners, and I love it.
I like that a lot with what I played in Detroit too. Just walking into things really.
It's so funny to me that you have this there's so much care and so much craft put into games and making them these compelling stories, but it's still. It has it gives the player the player has one job, and it's come on, play along.
Do the
that's
thing.
That's the joke with Skyrim, right? The world is ending and you're eating bugs. What are
exactly?
What's
and I think
here?
that is my favorite thing about games is that that the fact that they do hinge on just kind of human nonsense. I don't know. You're in Bloodborne. They're all right, you gotta kill these monsters, but first it's time to somersault into some pots.
Yeah.
One of my literal favorite things to do in GTA 5 is if you run and then press the jump button, you just go limp.
Yeah.
And trying to run off the side of a mountain and then go limp and see how far you roll is just all right, let's do it.
Yeah.
It's great fun.
I have a mini game for you called Insurance Fraud in the Saints Row games.
But I mean stuff like that. I think Saints Row very much leans into that silliness.
Yes,
but the fact that David Cage's games are so incredibly heavy and serious, but there's still so much wiggle room to just screw around and be.
I think that's
try
just
and pick up the fish and you fail and you're
Yeah. Any game where you try to pick something up and you can fail the interaction and the character's I don't know. I don't know. That made me really happy. It's also
funny.
I don't know, if you gave somebody the elevator pitch about that, I'm playing this new game. What's it about? Oh, it's well, you see Ellen Page is in it, and she has a ghost, and she's friends with the Green Goblin. What are you talking about? So that's an actual game that exists, and I think it has a ton of merit to it. But at the same time, there are parts that are very silly. I kept thinking. And the same thing where okay, video games aren't stupid. Video game players are stupid. I'm just digging myself deeper here. But again, giving yourself that opportunity to screw around. I thought of this one scene from American Pie 2, which is a very bad movie. It's a terrible movie. But there's a part when
I'm just like, how do we get here?
I don't know.
It's in the notes.
What do you want?
Put
it's
it
in the notes. I
notes.
wrote it. It says right here, this David Cage games remind me of the trombone scene from American Pie 2. No, wait, seriously, let me explain. You didn't even read the notes. Zach didn't play the game, so I'm on here on my own. Brian's homesick or whatever. Anyway, thank you everybody for tuning in. So no, there's a part where he sneaks into band camp and they think he's like this special like trombone like expert or something. Okay. And they put him up on stage in front of everybody, and everyone's like, oh yeah, this kid's really good at the trombone. And he's like, I don't know how to play the trombone. And they're like, no, you got to play the trombone. You got to play the trombone for everybody. And he just like fakes it. And everyone's like, well, he's like a special kid. I guess we're supposed to clap. And so everyone's like clapping for him. But that's video games. The video game is basically like, you are the one chosen to save the world.
Right.
You
are
are the hero.
Your way through it and die.
I get exactly what you're saying. And I think part of that is, you give a baby a really nice object. Baby doesn't care. Baby's going to explore it and try to figure out what is going on with this. And I think there's like something very primal to that where we get a hand on something and we want to figure it out. And for some people, that's like messing around in a game. And like, I read this one story from this developer where he was watching his son play Call of Duty, like the single player. And like, it was this really intense moment. And like, he was just watching his kid try to put a grenade in the man's mouth that was talking the whole time. And it's just like, what are we doing here? But I think that's kind of beautiful in a way. Like, obviously, somebody has a vision and they want you to adhere to it. But at the same time, I think being able to kind of make up your own rules is something that we want from that escapism.
I think it's a thing that some devs do a really good job of paying attention to as well. Like Breath of the Wild is a really good example of a game where they were like, okay, what a player is trying to do. Interesting. Let's make it possible. Basically reacting to things in that way. And I don't think David Cage games do a great job of that. And like you can try and interact with a lot of stuff and it's very limited. And
I think there's a different aim there, right?
Right, for sure.
Yeah, like it's impossible to build a game for every situation that somebody will dream up, right? But it is kind of fun to encourage exploration based on that and not just be like, there's secrets out there, but just instead be like, that thing you wanted to do that's really stupid, you can do it.
Yeah. Oh, any game where I can watch TV, I will totally do it every time.
Yeah.
I'm going to sit there and watch the TV.
Yeah, like those little details are really interesting to me too.
Yeah. So anyway.
I don't think you're wrong, but
yeah. I don't know. I had a really good time. I do really specifically love like David Cage games because it's like being it's one of those plays where they pull a member of the audience up on stage. They're like, all right, you're part of this now. And you're like, I don't know what I'm doing here. This is going to go horribly sideways.
It's interesting that Until Dawn didn't feel that way.
I think because it was rooted so heavily in corny, like B-movie, like horror tropes.
It didn't take itself so seriously that it didn't work, maybe.
Whereas David Cage is like, all right, everybody, we're all adults here. And we're like, no, we're not.
I think there's a little bit of that too. Like, I don't want to say hubris, but like that kind of like, this is serious art and we're going to make it serious. It's just like, okay.
Yeah.
What if we killed the teenagers?
Yeah.
One by one.
Yeah, let us decide what we want to be serious.
Yeah. So on the subject of games being stories and art and everything, Tacoma is finally out on PS4 this week. This is, of course, the second game from Fulbright Company. We've had Steve Gaynor on the show before. Tacoma, I feel like not as many people played it. It launched on Xbox One exclusively. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, Tacoma is a super cool game. I think that you talked about, fewer people playing this game than Gone Home, and I think it's because in your notes here, it says that it doesn't have the element of surprise that Gone Home had. And I think you're absolutely right. I think the reason that people sort of jumped on that bandwagon for Gone Home was that it was sort of something that a lot of people hadn't seen or played before, like a kind of narrative delivery that was just sort of unprecedented at the time. And not to say that Tacoma is more of that because it's much deeper, but it does really, really super interesting stuff. And in the same way we were talking about when you after a cutscene in Wolfenstein where the story continues in a way that's not necessarily like, here's what's happening in this story. Tacoma is a whole game built around that.
I think it's definitely another example of developers trying to make something that has non-linear stories.
Right.
And that you kind of absorb the conversations and piece them together in whatever order you want, depending on where you find someone. Mm-hmm. So the basic concept is you're on the station, you're trying to figure out what happened to everyone who was on there. And there are kind of scenes that are set up where I guess, I don't remember how it works, but there's AR, so you can see what people were talking about and replay logs.
So I was going to say, you're basically combing through this space station's logs, right? Yeah. Like they've recorded and documented everything that happens on the space station, and it's your responsibility to find out what happened to all the people that used to man this ship, and now they're gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean,
Which
it's
is a really
basically
cool
it's basically I mean holographic security footage. It's AR, whatever, but like the idea that you're trying to piece it together, and it's all kind of working its way backwards. I really like this game. I didn't finish it. I started on.
She just walked right through a wall.
Xbox. Yeah, because they're ghosts. They're,
can do that
They're
in
space
space.
ghosts. They can do that. But I think that I really like the setting.
job.
I really like the way it was framed, and I think it has some of the coolest like. I guess it's environmental storytelling, you know, where it's just where you kind of piece together like what a person's into based on
Like that's about a birthday party, and even that was just really pleasant to experience. You're like, okay, whose birthday is it? Who's celebrating? Who is not here? Why are they not here? Like, what's the conflict there? And it's the different characters are different colors, and they have emblems that are based on what they did on the ship. Like, if you're watching the video version, the green person there was the biologist. So it's like you kind of learn these characters piece by piece. I think it's very smart. I think a lot of people will like it. I didn't get super into it because. And I think this is personal preference rather than an actual criticism, is that I didn't enjoy having to jump between the things that I was exploring in the same scene. I didn't like having to like swap rooms and be like, okay, where's this guy? Let me re-roll to figure out where he is in this part. I just didn't enjoy how spread out the puzzles seemed, I guess.
Yeah.
But I think that's just me.
I mean, the scale of it is interesting. It's also the choice of setting. Like, I think when Gone Home came out, and it's like this very grounded human game in like a regular house, and it's all about like human stuff. And then they're like, we're following that up with a space game, and it's like, how many games have been in space? Like, how many times have you explored a space station?
Six
yeah,
games.
Only six,
all the 6 space station games of PlayStation.
And then the Mass Effect.
But no, yeah,
That's
but
half
like,
of them.
Yeah,
More
I mean,
than
it's,
half.
it's that there's that level of like this is sort of this is suddenly it becomes less relatable initially, and obviously
Yeah.
this is still a game about people, and it's about like human interaction and relationships and all that. But I think when you hear space station, you're immediately like, oh, when did the spacemen get here? When do I get the laser?
I'm going to be honest, I find the concept of where is everyone gone on this spaceship a lot more interesting than, is my sister home? Like, I think it as a concept is a
my
lot more
sister home?
interesting to me.
I feel like you're being very reductive to Gone Home,
they're
first of
so
all.
sister at, though?
different. Like Gone Home was weirdly haunting because
I
you're in
agree.
this house all alone,
Yeah.
and you're like, "Where is this?"
Oh, it's
family?
definitely spooky.
Yeah. Whereas you go to space, like
my
on the
sister.
one hand, like it's less relatable, I guess, because it is a space station. But on the other hand, like it's still humans doing human things.
But there's also just like an incredible amount of detail hidden in this
There are,
game.
like nutrition facts.
Yeah,
you can pick
you
up
can
all of
dig
them.
into so much stuff. Like there's so much stuff written on whiteboards and in computer files and emails and stuff, and like just outside of the actual conversations and scenes that you're watching play out. There's all this additional information to be had. It's like information overload the game. It's really cool. I really liked Tacoma a lot.
I mean, it's like a hard sci-fi drama.
Yeah.
There's a lot you can piece together. Also, like the fact that I think it's a lot of the packaging is in Indonesian, and you're like, oh wait, they like started launching spaceships out of Indonesia. That's interesting. And then you kind of learn
bunch
like,
of pictures of our friend Anne Maurice in that.
Yeah.
really?
Yeah, there's a bunch of pictures.
So
of
there's
her.
there's
Oh,
like
that's weird.
there's like a K-pop group
Oh
in
my
the
God,
game,
she's in that?
and she's all of those characters.
Oh, that's bizarre.
Yeah.
How did I play that and not know that?
Shout
Yeah.
out to Anne Maurice.
Okay. Very strange.
Yes.
Yeah. So that's finally out. If that sounds interesting, check it out. I definitely recommend it. I think it's a really good game. I think it's kind of a bummer that it didn't get the same reception that Gone Home got. It also came out. I mean, it came out on Xbox the same month as Uncharted 4. I don't know if that has anything to do with it. I feel like it just kind of it was.
That's a long period of exclusivity to Xbox.
Yeah. Well, they had to port it over too, I guess.
Yeah.
I don't know how
Interesting.
much that was a business thing and how much that was them just needing to. I mean, they're a small team and they
Sure.
had to, they had to convert all of the Xbox shapes into PlayStation shapes.
That's right.
Yeah.
It's very
yeah,
difficult.
there's no button to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, just switch it.
Other games coming out this week: Conan Exiles, about the barbarians. This is, in fact, a game, I believe, I don't know if this is still the case on consoles, where you can adjust the genital sizes.
I like Conan Exiles a lot.
Yeah?
Separate from the fact that you can adjust
Okay.
genitals.
What else does it have going for it?
So
It's like Rust. Is it like Rust? Okay.
it's a survival game,
Sure.
but the best thing about Conan Exiles is the interaction that you have with other players. Like some of them, like you'll just find someone who's like building a house, and then you'll like go off for a bit, and then you'll be like, "Oh, sweet, you got a staircase, nice, dude." And he'll be like, "Hey, thanks, yeah, I really like put a lot of. You want to see my house? Like, let me show it to you."
It's like real
Yeah,
life.
but- I mean, you can like find people who'll just like beat the crap out of you, but there are like these really genuine human interactions of everyone just like trying to populate this like vast area of just being like, "What you building there?" Huh, I'm gonna destroy it. And it's just like it's really fun in that way, and that there's the threats aren't as imminent as they are in a similar game like DayZ, so it like feels a little sweeter. Like some of the community is terrible, but it's a lot of fun.
That doesn't sound barbaric at all. That sounds
There are
like
plenty
very-
of barbaric things
Yeah.
going on, but I had a lot of nice interactions too.
I believe James Duggan infamously did a Let's Play of this where he just had just a giant swinging dong and wasn't wearing pants, and the whole Let's Play is him just running around like naked.
Yeah.
And
People will be like, "Nice walk."
I believe it was up for a cumulative total of 2 hours.
If you got the option,
you can't put that out there.
Why would you pick like a little Vienna sausage?
That's right. Well, I like the idea of like somebody building a house and it's just got this big just dong just hammering away on a house.
It's good.
No, I'm excited about this. I think there's also like a huge patch coming day one to cover up the big. You okay over there?
Yeah, that was good.
All right. No, but seriously, they're putting a big patch on it so that it, I don't know, runs better or whatever.
Dick jokes.
Great. Another game out this week is called Trailblazers. This is a co-op racing game from ex-Codemasters and Lionhead developers, which looks really interesting. It looks like a cross between Wipeout, but with Splatoon's ink mechanics.
So this is really interesting. We've seen this a couple of times, and I believe the way that it's almost like car combat also, because as you're painting, you'll get speed boosts and collision damage boosts if you stay within your lane, like if you stay within the areas that you've painted before. So you're not only racing against people, but you're also trying to cover the most ground so that when you come back around for another lap, you get these like boosts from the groundwork that you laid in the previous one.
Right.
It's interesting.
It's the same logic as Splatoon. So you're on it's odd to have sort of team racing, but
Yeah.
the idea that you've got like 4
What
people
about
who are
Crash
painting.
Team Racing?
That's different. I mean, I guess,
that?
sure, fine, I guess. But yeah, this looks really cool. Another game out this week is Through the Woods, which is a third-person horror adventure that is rooted in Norse lore. So if you've just played God of War and you're thinking about a lot of, I don't know, Norse monsters and stuff, this could be a good sort of follow-up to that. It also looks a lot like the Netflix movie The Ritual, which I recommend.
Too spooky.
I was looking. I just did a quick Google because I was making sure this is the one. Through the Woods is a friend of mine actually wrote about this game for Paste and talked about how it is a really cool portrayal of motherhood in games.
Really?
Yeah, which is something that is not
We don't
very
see a
often,
lot.
tackled.
Yeah, I'm hoping we get more of that just because, I don't know.
It's an interesting relationship dynamic.
Yeah, we've got a lot of dad games right now.
Yep.
I mean, that could make like a perfect companion piece to God of War.
Totally.
Do the mom stuff, then the dad stuff.
And Norse.
Yeah,
Wait,
could
And
be
the
Norse.
stuff, yeah.
All right, what else we got? Speaking of Norse stuff, there's another game called Chains of Valhalla, which is like a Norse-ish inspired platformer. When I say Norse-ish, I mean that there are like robots and lasers and stuff. It looks very video gamey.
Sounds very Norse.
Tier.
It has Valhalla in the title, so there's that.
Yeah.
I recognize him from his chamber
Yes.
from the God of War game.
There you go. Raging Justice. It looks hilarious. This is a bunch of ex-Rare devs who made like a beat 'em up, kind of Streets of Rage style.
We talked about this on NVC last week. It was really funny because on that show we have a skip of the week and a pick of the week. And our skip of the week was an old Data East beat 'em up that was like modeled. I forget the name of it now, but it was like modeled after James Bond. But then Philip's pick of the week was this game, which is basically a spoof on that game. It was really funny, but it's a really insane game where just a very standard beat 'em up. But you're also doing crazy like you can pick up a shotgun and you're just like blowing people away. But then like words will spin out of them and it'll be like, "Awesome, great job." Like what the
That's
hell?
the thing is like there are multiple ex-Rare devs who've gone on to work on other games, and everything they've done has so much personality.
Yeah.
It's just like they're so rich in that, and it's something that I really like. I hear ex-Rare devs, and I'm like, ooh, what are they working on now?
This also it looks so much like an Acclaim game, like an arcade.
It looks like Mortal Kombat.
It looks like Mortal Kombat graphics, but like Streets of Rage gameplay.
Yeah.
So it looks like, I don't know, really fun.
It's really like crummy mocap.
Yeah. But it's also like I don't think it is mocap. Like I can't tell.
No,
There's
definitely
something about
not,
it
yeah.
that's just very like oddly disarming about it. Lunch Truck Tycoon 2, if you're trying to get warmed up for Jurassic World Evolution.
I was just gonna ask if there are dinosaurs in it.
What if those papooses got out of control and started giving people
Seagulls stealing your food a lot.
That'd be pretty awful. Yeah.
Just like in real life.
Shantae Half Genie Hero Ultimate Edition, which is Shantae.
How many
and all
times
of
has
the-
this game been released?
Well, they already released it on PS4. Now it's out again. And
Now
all
this
the
is the
DLC
ultimate
costumes.
edition.
Skyrim all
It has
over
been
again.
out for like 10 years.
Yeah.
It's like
I mean,
the end of
the
The
Shantae the franchise has been around forever, but the secret about it is all those games are awesome.
Oh
Like,
yeah,
all
no
the Shantae
no
games
shade
are
against
great.
them. Like,
Yeah.
they're good games. I just like I see Half Genie Hero like every other week. I feel
Speaking
like
of games that start with S and have been released a lot, where's Shenmue at right now?
They're animating the eyes.
Yeah.
That's where they are in development. That's the difficult part of the process.
they're developing the soul.
Does
They took
anyone
a
know
break
when the
the
last time
characters.
we heard updates on that one?
They took a break because they had to go find some sailors. So, yeah.
Well, they're remastering 1 and 2, and those
That's
are
right.
coming out. Is that this year?
I believe
Yes.
so. Yes.
But
And
I don't
then
know about 3.
3, they're probably going to put up another Kickstarter or something. I don't know.
I feel like we got a recent-ish update on Shenmue 3. I can't remember off the top of my head.
What's gonna come out first, Kingdom Hearts or Shenmue 3?
Kingdom Hearts.
Kingdom Hearts.
because otherwise
Which is,
there will be
if you had
blood.
asked me that a year ago, I would have been like totally Shenmue. But now it's like, no, it'll totally be
Which is
Shenmue. I
that's a
think it's
crazy thing to
coming
say
out.
because There Will Be Blood is actually a kingdom you can visit in Kingdom Hearts 3.
Dude, I would be so into that game if they were suddenly like, and now for the next Kingdom Hearts, it'll be the worlds of Paul Thomas Anderson. Boogie Nights, everybody. All right, also out this week, Sub Area, which is an intense action puzzler with roguelike elements. It's a video game. Reverie, which looks kind of cute. It's also on Vita. It is Earthbound, kind of Zelda Star Tropics looking game. Like it looks like if you had Zelda Dungeons, but with the Star Tropics yo-yo and the graphics of Earthbound. So
Oh, speaking my language.
somebody would like that. And then Mega Dimension Neptunia Vir, which is Mega. This
Take
is
a dart, throw it, see if.
this is
What's
Mega
the name of
Dimension
this?
Neptunia 7, but with VR stuff. So they took the Roman numeral.
So
for
VIIR.
7. Severe.
V-
Yeah, so I don't actually know. I don't know these games very well to begin with. And then when you throw in the idea of what they do in VR, but you're watching it on a screen, like when they do like a trailer for PSVR stuff, I'm always like, what am I seeing? What are you trying to show me? So if you're into it, there you go. Also out on PSVR, there's 2MD VR football,
That's a very good game.
and then Cool Painter VR, which is a painting game in VR.
I like painting games.
yeah, I don't think there's a bunch of them on PSVR yet, so that's nice.
That's awesome, yeah.
It's like Tilt
Yeah.
Brush, like that kind of thing.
Yeah, that kind of
I
thing.
got really weirdly into Tilt Brush. Like I'm not a painter.
Like
and
those things are cool to me, but like, what do you do with it?
look
like-
at it.
So my problem with that
You
is
sit there and admire
But
it.
yeah, like there's no way to like
picnic.
export it and share it with people.
I
Like,
think
it's-
I guess you could do
I
the
hope
share
Dreams
button,
fills
sort
that
of.
gap.
That'd be
Yeah.
cool.
When Dreams finally comes out, that's the whole point, is like sharing your creations
Yeah,
and being able to export
like
them to
I'm
your
not
own
trying to be
and-
reductive, like our design.
no, I get it.
But like,
Yeah.
like it
I just
always
think-
feels very weird to me.
Yeah, Dreams should be a game that lets us like actually share things.
What I think is a bummer is that currently, and I hope Dreams kind of fixes this, is a lot of I mean, we don't even know. Do we know if that's VR or not? Is it a PSVR game?
It was last time I heard about
it?
it.
I
Yeah.
think they are planning to, but
Okay.
don't know what
It would make sense.
is the
I know it's got the sort of the motion controls,
Yeah.
artsy fartsy stuff. So much of those are, it's for making like stuff in a 3D space, and like Tilt Brush does this too. And like I'm like, just give me like a large canvas. Like there was one
Right.
VR game that was about tagging, and it was like you had like the side of a boxcar to paint on, and you're still painting a 2-dimensional image, but it's using much larger physical space.
I wouldn't be surprised if you can do that in Dreams. I spoke about that when we saw it at PSX. But the thing with Dreams is every question that I asked them was like, can you do this? They were like, yeah. Like I literally every question they were like, yes, let's show you. And I would be like, what about this though? And they'd be like, yes, here. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's a way to just be like 2D
Yeah.
paint.
Well
Yeah.
played, Media
don't-
Molecule.
Yeah.
Don't know if Cool Painter VR has 2D painting options exactly. There is a video I saw online of someone making a very realistic Sonic the Hedgehog in a 3D space in VR.
I'm
Finally.
sold. There we go. I needed that. Yeah.
So that's what's out this week, and yeah, that was the Beyond. We did it. It's over. That's it. We're
did it.
done.
We did
We're
the thing.
done.
Above
Yeah,
and beyond.
yeah, we really did it. We talked about Beyond on Beyond. I think we did a pretty good.
This is a pretty meta episode.
Yeah,
was.
so good. Yeah, and we'll have I don't know, hopefully some more stuff to coming out soon.
Yeah, I hope we're getting Detroit Code soon. We don't know even when the embargo is, but game's coming out May 25th, of course.
Yeah. In the meantime, of course, Beyond Two Souls is out on PlayStation Plus. So if you want to go find some people to talk about that with, head over to the Beyond Podcast Beyond Facebook group, which is facebook.com/group/podcast beyond. Go talk about Beyond over there in the Beyond group. So then you're just really just Beyond.
This is really giving me a headache.
You can do some Buzz Lightyear quotes while you're at it. Anyway, that's the show. You can find us all on Twitter. I'm Max Scoville. Alana is Charlana Zard. Zach is Zacharias D. And Cassidy is C. Moser.
Nope, just at Cassidy Moser.
Damn it. Cassidy Moser with like a bunch of D's.
Two
and E's.
S's and two E's. Yep.
all right.
It's,
6
not my fault.
D's.
All right.
So-
Well, there we go. Yeah. Just type whatever you. Let's just end this episode.
I'm sorry I said the thing about Remedy being from here. I feel really bad about that still.
You know,
I
the Finnish
was-
people are very disappointed
Yeah.
in you.
I always thought that they. I mean, it's because
They'll
they're
make
all of
mistakes
the
sometimes. It's
all
hard
of
to
the
remember them
games.
This is the first time I ever have.
They all
So
speak
Oh, your
English
first
in the
mistake?
games.
yeah,
I'm glad we
so-
could share that with you.
Anyway, Beyond.
Beyond.